Hello, my name is Alex Michael, and this is where I document my journey through entrepreneurship. Today I'm going to talk about level of work in equals level of work out, or the outcome, and then how we usually tend to be the one that's in our own way. So first of all, it's like the amount of work you end up putting into something tends to correlate with the amount of value you can extract from it. So if you put in 10 hours of work on creating a 1-minute video, oftentimes it's going to perform better than the one that took you 5 minutes to create. And the reason being is that people can tell inherently how difficult something was to put together, and those are the things that are really attractive in life. You think about really, really good basketball players or really, really good actors, and they've always put in so much time and effort to become exceptional at what they're doing. And the level of work they put in eventually reaps major rewards on the other end. And so if you put that into the context of a business, the reason that these really big businesses have really elaborate systems for their marketing and so on is they always want to make sure that the level of work that's put into a certain thing is equal to the level of value that they get to extract from it later. But really the kind of interesting thing that has shown up in today's world is social media has kind of taken out that big level of trust. 1950s up until probably even the 90s, there were just big major players, we'll say Johnson and Johnson. Everyone just always got everything from them. But you have a lot of disruptions now because smaller players can enter the market through social media, and that's because social media has made it completely merit-based. It lets the mass decide what's good and what's not. And so really small companies, as long as they get the really foundational things correct, they can insert themselves into places that a big business doesn't have. Small businesses have a very unique advantage in that they can shift quickly and move with trends, whereas big companies, it takes a while and it's slow. And it's because they have so many elaborate systems to put in a ton of work on a very pinpointed thing, and oftentimes, because they're all focused on one thing, there's other things that crop up that are being missed out on, that small businesses don't have to have that super elaborate system to catch up and take a hold of that. And then once they have a foothold, then they can start twisting and putting more narrow work to kind of expand their way out from their initial niche that they captured. Now, from the not business side of it and the more entrepreneurial side is for really small businesses where there's 1 to 5 employees. It tends to be that the entrepreneur, the person pushing the thing forward, is always the one that gets in their own way. And that's not even just in business, that's also in life. And so if we think about working out constantly, everyone knows working out's good for you. You can see when people that are in really, really good shape, they're attractive, everyone wants to go with them. They all tend to be high performers. And so what is keeping everyone from just doing that? Themselves. So in the book Atomic Habits, there's this idea that every time you make a choice, there's one part of you that wins. Say there's 100 little people that get a say in what you do. And every time that you decide I'm going to work out versus I'm not going to work out, you are voting in whichever way. Maybe at the start it's very difficult for you to work out, and so you have maybe only a handful of 100, so 5 out of 100 people are voting for you to work out, and sometimes they can win out. But the more often you let them win, the more often the votes follow on one side or the other, which means if you continue to choose not working out, it's always going to be that you don't work out. Unless you break that cycle, you start moving in the right direction, and then slowly your 100 little people will all start voting in a specific way, and then you get to reap the benefits of everything else. But the problem is that you have to push through that really hard, difficult time and force yourself to do the thing that you don't want to do. And in fact, doing things you don't want to do actually changes your brain chemistry. And I don't know exactly the part of the brain, but it actually is correlated to living longer, interestingly enough. So not only is working out going to make you live longer, it's also going to change your brain, which is going to make you live longer. Interesting how that works. But to sum that all up, it's basically the idea that you always have momentum. You're either growing or shrinking. In a business context, the S&P 500 grows at 10% every year over year. And so if you're a business and you're not growing at least 10% every year over year, you're actually shrinking because the market is growing by 10%, but you're not. And so in relation to the rest of everything else, you're actually getting smaller and fading out of the spotlight. And so you get to choose whether you're growing or shrinking in your personal life and whether that momentum is there. And that's by forcing yourself to do things that you don't necessarily want to do, that are hard, that are difficult, like working out regularly. And so each choice you have, you get to spend those votes, whether you're growing or shrinking. And that applies not only to your personal life, but in business. And so in business, I realize there's like so many different moving pieces, especially when you're like starting out, that it becomes, you kind of get lost in this haze of like there's a million different things going on at once. And so it's hard to look at the big picture and say, this specific thing out of these 100 things that I need to do is going to be the one thing that actually moves the needle forward and like gets the business moving. And the interesting thing with business is like you only have to get a few things like really, really right. And so as long as you have the foundation, like the foundational things, then it becomes just your beliefs. And so like I constantly hear any of these like large players, people that have, $10 million in revenue businesses and up, it's always like it's mindset shift. It's a mindset shift. But there's a difference between like the 0 to 1 million and then 1 million to 10 million and then 10 million above. And if you've reached that 10 million mark, it's safe to say you have all the foundational things like really, really solid. And so that's the point where the beliefs like come into play. And so, okay, let's move it backwards. Like what's the, 1 million to 10 million mark? That's okay. Do you have the right people doing the right things in a way that's still foundational and putting in the amount of work so you can extract that value out? Okay, so we move the needle down even further, and you go to like the 0 to 1 million in revenue, not profit. That always tends to be the entrepreneur. Like that's like the main person that's pushing this forward, and it's like, where is that person at? Like just physically, spiritually, is this a person that everyone else is going to leave? When the trend that I've seen is like anyone that's like in the 1 million in revenue and below, it's always the entrepreneur that tends to be like the bottleneck. Somehow with some decision they've made, they refuse to give up control, they refuse to hire people out. And sometimes that's just like a natural progression of things. It's because you had to really, really do these hard things for so long, and so you got really good at them. And so it's really hard to hand that off and watch someone else like fumble around with it, not do as good. But as an entrepreneur, you have to do that. And so maybe you have to hire two people to get the same output that you would as one person. But that's what you need to move the business forward, because you as the entrepreneur have to move on to the next thing and create the next system to grow the business in totality. And so having to give up that control and being able to hire the right person as opposed to doing it yourself is a really difficult path from the 1 to 10 million mark. Everything underneath $1 million is just, are you good enough at what you're doing? You could just be amazing at marketing and have an awful product and still get there. You could just have an awesome product and suck at marketing, and then the product just kind of sells itself and you can get to $1 million. Or you could just be super good at sales in general, and you could have awful leads and just really know how to turn that sale on its head, and you get a better conversion rate. And so figuring out where you as the entrepreneur can just like really, really excel is the major bottleneck from that 0 to 1 million, because the steps are out there, and everyone that's past that point tends to scream it from the rooftops, because they have all these masterminds and things to get other people there. So it's just foundational things. It's just things you're doing personally that's stopping you from getting to where you want to go. And that's my 2 cents. Thanks for watching.